Today I'd like to take a look at a game I played recently at the Worcester Chess Club. In fact, I played it last Thursday, and it was against a gentleman named Neto. I had the white pieces, he had the black ones, and his rating is about 1650. I played d4, and after d5, c4, e6, we have an opening known as the Queen's Gambit declined. Knight c3, knight f6, both normal moves for this opening. And I chose to enter a variation known as the exchange variation, with c takes d5, e takes d5. I put my dark squared bishop on g5, pinning his knight to his queen, which creates, in some lines, a tactical problem for black on d5. Bishop to e7, knight to f3, and after black played c6, I played queen c2, stopping his light squared bishop from coming to the f5 square. And so you might think that it'd be a good idea for black to put this bishop on f5 right away, rather than play c6. And while that might be a reasonable move, black at least has to consider that white at that point, either immediately or soon, will have the move queen to b3, forking d5 and b7. So Neto played c6. I played queen c2, stopping his light squared bishop from coming to f5, and he played bishop to g4. And this move activates the light squared bishop, but it runs into a move that improves white's kingside knight with tempo. I played knight to e5. Neto retreated to h5, and I played h3, which in hindsight maybe wasn't so great a move. But my idea was to play g4, attacking the bishop on h5, which would force it to retreat to g6, where I could capture it with my knight from e5, which would get for me the advantage of the two bishops. So I played h3, he played knight bd7, and I played g4, which was played as the result of a little bit of a miscalculation. I saw that he could play knight takes d5, knight takes e5. Then I thought I would play d takes e5 with a double attack on the knight on f6 and the bishop on h5. And I saw that he could play bishop to g6, getting one of those pieces out of the way while counterattacking my queen on c2. But I thought I would play queen to b3 and now be attacking his b7 pawn and his knight on f6, which I thought would result in me winning material. However, I should have calculated a little bit more deeply, because in this position, black has knight to e4, threatening the bishop on g5. And after I trade that bishop off, his queen from e7 is guarding the b7 pawn. So I don't win anything. And black's knight on e4 is a pretty nice piece. But Neto instead played the move bishop to g6 immediately, which allows me to make good on my idea. I traded on g6. And then I played the move bishop to g2. Okay, so white here has secured the two bishops, which is thought to be a better combination of minor pieces than either a bishop and a knight or two knights. So I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage here. Neto played knight h7, which attacks this bishop on g5, but unfortunately sticks the knight on not a very good square on h7. I played bishop to f4, keeping this dark squared bishop on the board and controlling the b8 square and the c7 square, which otherwise might be used by black heavy pieces. Neto played knight to b6, and I thought it would be a good idea at some point to play the move e2 to e4, trying to open the position for the two bishops. Typically, when you have two bishops, you want the center of the board to be open because bishops are long-range pieces and knights are short-range pieces. So if you can make the board more open in the center, it's the long-range moves that will tend to be the more impactful ones. But here I saw some kind of issue with him capturing on e4 and taking advantage of the vulnerable d-pawn. So I played rook d1 to prepare e4. Black played bishop to h4. Not a move I understand very much. I think black could have found something better to do with his time, such as castling kingside. I played e4. Okay, and maybe in hindsight this wasn't such a great move. because at some point, black's probably going to trade off his d-pawn for white's e-pawn. And when that happens, the d5 square becomes an outpost for the black knights. I kind of thought, though, that since I had the two bishops, I was sort of compelled to open the position and that things would be good for me in spite of him having an outpost. And I'm still not sure I was wrong about that. He castled kingside, as did I, and then he took on e4. Okay, I considered as a way of further opening the position playing the move d5 here, but didn't like the way the tactics worked out, so I played knight takes e4, allowing knight to d5, with the plan to retreat my bishop to h2. And black is definitely better off than he was a moment ago, now having this nice outpost on d5 for his knights. But white still has, white still has two nice bishops on neighboring diagonals, and then nice knight on e4, an active rook on d1, decent queen on c2. So I really thought white should still be considered better here. Neto played knight h to f6, which is a very good move because this knight on h7 wasn't a good piece, and he'd love to trade it off for my good knight on e4. Knight d6, though, attacks the b7 pawn and prevents the trade of knights. Neto defended that pawn with queen d7, which allows me to move my knight from d6 to a better square, potentially with tempo. I played knight to c4, and the idea now is to put that knight on e5, where it will be hitting the queen on d7. Neto played rook a to d8, and I played knight e5. He moved his queen over to e7, but now after rook f to e1, I'm developing another piece with tempo. This knight is now threatening to move away, for example, to the g6 square, capturing a pawn, and then capturing the bishop on h4, taking advantage of this revealed attack on the black queen. Neto played queen b4 to get his queen out of the way, but after a3, queen a5, I really think white should have a significant advantage. This white knight on e5 is a nice piece. These two bishops are both nice pieces. White's rooks are centralized. The queen's on a decent square. And the black queen is not really a threat to the white king, while the white queen has some potential to show up on the g6 square later or on h7 to combine with the knight on e5 or the bishop on g2 to create some kind of attack. But here I was faced with a choice, and I had two options that both seemed good to me. One was to play knight to c4. I noticed that my bishop on h2 is guarding c7, so black can't retreat his queen to c7. He'd have to stick his queen either on b5 or a6, and I think a6 is the far superior square. If he goes to b5 instead, then after bishop to f1, as far as I can tell, it's impossible for black to get his queen out of the way of a revealed attack. So he would have had to play queen to a6, but again after bishop f1, white is threatening to reveal an attack on the black queen. And I thought during the game that black would have to respond to that with b5, scaring the knight away, but that would secure c5 for me as an outpost. I think what the computer points out is that black doesn't actually have to move his queen here because there is no square the white knight can move to on which it's threatening anything worth threatening. So it's one of those situations in which it looks like it should be great for white, but the tactics don't yield anything. I chose a different avenue, though. I played the move knight to f3, attacking this bishop on h4. And the bishop can't move away. If it moved to g5, it would simply be captured. So black has to play the move g5. And now after knight takes h4, g takes h4, white has two bishops for two knights, which is usually thought to be a decent advantage. But I miscalculated again here, and I had planned on this move to take my queen from c2 and put it on the g5 square, attacking h4 and winning that pawn. But of course, that's not a legal move for the queen, so I had to come up with something else here. And I think the best move was g5, forcing that knight on f6 to move away. And then trying to round up this pawn on h4. And that, oops. For example, a rook can show up on e4 and then capture on h4, and that will combine very well with the queen from c2. The bishop can jump to e4 as well. Everything can be piled up against the h7 square, and black could be in a lot of trouble. I missed that, though, and was tempted to play the move rook e5, pinning the knight on d5 to the queen, and maybe, at some point in the future, moving the knight over to h5, probably when it's not attacked by the knight on f6, and again combining its efforts with the efforts of the queen on c2 to launch some kind of attack on the black king. Neto played rook fe8, and I didn't want to play rook d to e1 in this situation, which is a natural kind of doubling of the rooks on an open file, because I thought that would give Neto the option of playing queen takes e1 check, rook takes e1, and rook takes e1 check, creating an interesting material imbalance. Preferred to play in a way that was pretty balanced, but that might favor me in some small ways. So I didn't want to allow queen takes e1 check, and I played queen to f5 instead. Neto played queen a4, attacking this rook on d1, and putting more pressure on the d4 pawn. So white seems to be better here, but black definitely has counterplay. Okay, at this point, I probably should have found some way to move my rook on d1 away, or to protect it, maybe with a move like queen to d3. But I got fancy and played bishop to f3. And this move has the purpose of defending the rook on d1 without having to move it off of a square from which it defends d4. Neto played knight e7. All right, and here's maybe the point in the game at which I made the worst move. I had the ability to maybe just retreat my queen, possibly to the d3 square, but I was worried about the fact that this knight was going to show up on h6 and be defending the pawn on h4 and attacking the rook on e5. I thought that would represent the sort of the dissipating of my advantage. So instead, I found a move that I thought was pretty good. I sacrificed an exchange on e7 with rook takes e7. And now I have two bishops, and as was true before this move, I guess, they're totally unopposed by bishops on the other side. But this move, rook takes e7, allows me to kind of continue to play with the initiative, and I thought that would be good for me. After rook takes e7, I played g5, trying to scare away the knight, intending at some point to round up this pawn on h4, also at some point to create a battery toward h7, which would hopefully win me the game. I really thought like I was in great shape here. I really felt like I thought I was in good shape here. But Neto played the strongest move in the position and a difficult move to find, in my opinion, and he played it pretty quickly. Rook to d5. The rook attacks the queen, so this move comes with tempo, but it walks right into potentially being captured by the bishop on f3. But unfortunately, my earlier light squared bishop move was made to defend the rook on d1. So if I now take on d5, Neto has this move queen takes d1 check. And his next move will be to capture the bishop on d5, and black will be up a rook. So this was a very nice move by Neto, rook to d5. I had to kind of scramble to find a way to maintain what I thought was my advantage. I played queen to f4 with the idea that the queen might like to check black on b8 at some point, and that once this knight moves away, maybe my queen will take the h4 pawn. Again, maybe it'll combine with the bishop from e4 to launch an attack on the black king. But Neto found another nice move. Once again, putting a piece on a square on which it superficially looks like black's going to lose material, because I can simply take the knight on e4. But if I do, again, I lose my rook to queen takes d1 check. And black is much, much better here. So Neto stunned me with another nice shot, and I had to find a way to continue. Unfortunately, white doesn't really have any good moves here, and I couldn't find any for that reason during the game. And there's a saying in chess, or there's an idea in chess, that if you're going to have a bad position, you might as well have some kind of material to compensate you for it. So I was very tempted to, and ultimately decided to, capture the pawn on h4 with my queen. That doesn't give me bonus material because black's going to take this pawn on g5, but at least it keeps me from being down. Neto played knight to g5. A nice move that threatens this undefended bishop on f3, and if he were to capture it, he'd be forking my king and queen. So this is pretty bad news. My bishop cannot retreat to g2. Let's get rid of some of these lines. My bishop can't retreat to g2 or take on d5 because the result would be queen takes d1 check. So I played a move that I knew was bad, but that I thought was the best move practically because I thought it left black with having to find a tactical shot that wasn't incredibly easy to find. I played rook d3. Now my rook is no longer in danger on the back rank, attacked by the black queen, but unfortunately rook d3 allows a nice tactic for black. I thought during the game that this tactic would win material, but as Neto pointed out to me after the game, it would only have simplified the position, but still it was a good tactic to go for because it would have resulted in a completely winning endgame for black. And that tactic is queen takes d4. Wow. Yeah, this is a stunning move. I thought I should go for this because it would be hard for Neto to find this move. And now the problem is, after rook takes d4, there's knight takes f3 check. And then after some king move, there's knight takes h4. And black is in an endgame, up a pawn and up an exchange, and with the ability to pretty quickly bring these rooks down to the second rank and start eating up the white pawns. I think black would win the game easily from that point. The only alternative for white, since the queen on h4 is undefended and under attack, and the rook on d3 is undefended and under attack, is to trade queens with queen takes d4. And then after rook takes d4, move this rook on d3 to some square from which it still defends the bishop on f3. In this case, c3. But now, I mean, again, black can just play knight takes f3, and after rook takes f3, rook d2, the other rook's coming to e2, and this is an easy win for black. And though Neto did not play this tactic, he played something that was also very good. He played knight takes f3 check, rook takes f3, rook e1 check, forcing my king to the g2 square. And now, unfortunately, my pawn on d4 is under defended, so he played queen takes d4. Yeah, this is not a very good position for white. Very well played by Neto up to this point. I played rook f4. It's not a good idea when you're down material typically to trade queens, as that just gets your opponent closer to a winning endgame. I played rook f4 for that reason, attacking the queen and preventing the trade. He played queen d3, another nice move. His idea now is to put the queen on f1 with check, which at the time I thought was not really a threat, because after my next move, queen g4, and his next, queen f1 check, I was intending to come to g3, which I did, and then after his next check, rook to d3, I thought my king would be pretty safe on h4, but was totally wrong about that. If I had played king h4 here, black would have had the move rook to e6, threatening, if nothing else, rook h6 check, followed by rook g6 check, winning the queen on g4. Okay, so in a bit of a panic, I had to find some other move, and I chose f3. Unfortunately, though, this doesn't stop black from playing this very nice move, rook e6, which Neto played pretty quickly. And now the threat, again, is to win the queen, this time by pinning it to the white king. I played queen f5, just trying to get the queen out of the way. Neto played rook g6 check, king h4, queen f2 check. Big trouble for white. I played king h5, and Neto could go ahead and take a bishop here with queen h2. He could also play rook d5, pinning the white queen to the king and winning in that way. But he chose to throw in a check first and see if any checkmates show up, which is a good way to handle things. He played rook h6 check, and now if white makes the mistake of playing king g4, queen h4 will be checkmate. So this is a good example of a player playing a move that gives his opponent the chance to make a mistake. I played king g5, avoiding the checkmate, and now Neto went ahead and made good on one of his other threats, rook to d5, and the white queen is lost. It's worse than that, actually, because the black queen is attacking the bishop on h2, and there's nowhere to move that bishop to make it safe. So white's going to lose the queen for a rook and the bishop, if not get checkmated. Rook e4. Okay, white is totally lost here, and when you are completely lost and you know it, and you know your opponent knows it, all you can really do to be as practical as possible is create some kind of threat that hopefully he'll completely miss. So white is now threatening rook e8 checkmate. And he could make some bad move like queen takes h2, and the result would be rook e8 checkmate, which would obviously get white back in the game. Neto, to his credit, simply took the queen on f5. I took back, and he played queen takes f3 check, another very strong move. He could have simply taken this this bishop on h2, but queen takes f3 check forces checkmate. I played bishop f4, and now black mates with the move rook h5. Neto didn't see that, but it really doesn't matter at this point in the game. The time when you want to be accurate is when the difference between the best move and the second best move, or the top couple moves and the moves beneath them, is the difference between winning and drawing, or drawing and losing, or winning and losing. That's not the case here. Neto can do pretty much whatever he wants, and he'll eventually win the game. He played queen takes h3 check, and after king e5, played rook e6 check, and after king d4, played the very practical rook takes e4 check. King takes e4, and he played g6. Again, I don't know if this is a super precise move, but it doesn't matter. Black can do whatever he wants. He just has to not give up a queen for nothing. a4, queen b3. Okay, white's only hope in this position is stalemate. So my idea was to get rid of the remaining material and get Neto to draw me somehow. Bishop to e5, queen takes a4 check, and I played bishop d4, hoping to lose the bishop to c5, which is what happened. I have to get rid of my available moves in order to get stalemated. I played king d3, and after queen takes d4 check, king e2, g5. I have one non-king unit left to get rid of, so I played b4, and after c takes b4, king e1, b3, king e2, b2. Yeah, there isn't really hope for stalemate. I tried, but there's not much here. I played king f3, b1 queen, king g2. Neto played queen b to e4 check. And whenever you have to talk about an opponent's queen move, including two letters, one for the file it's coming from, or the rank, you know you're probably not in a very good position. I played king f1. Neto played queen d d3 check, king f2, queen d to f3 check, king g1, and again here he didn't find the fastest checkmate in queen to g2, but it doesn't really matter. He played queen e to g4 check, king h2, and queen f to h3 checkmate. So I ate a nice slice of humble pie last Thursday, but I think, you know, this is a loss I'm kind of okay with, because even though it was a 500+ point upset that'll cost me a crap load of rating points, it wasn't really a game in which I played terribly. It was just a game in which my opponent played very, very well. So congratulations to Neto, and I hope you enjoyed watching the video.